Welcome, I'm Catherine Hadro, and this is EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. Nation on edge. As lawmakers push for impeachment this week, we speak with a former Catholic congressman and pro-life Democrat for his take on the state of the government and potential for pro-life progress. Vote against the innocent. Argentina legalizes abortion, becoming the largest nation in Latin America to do so. We speak with a legislator there who lobbied against the abortion law to discuss its impact on citizens and countries around the globe. And 9 days for life. U.S. bishops are launching a way for Catholics to uphold the sanctity of life. We'll tell you how you can participate from your very own home. National tension is on full display right now as the FBI warns of plans for armed protests in all 50 state capitals and D.C. this weekend. And the U.S. House of Representatives pushes ahead to impeach President Donald Trump for the second time, following last week's deadly Capitol Hill riot.
My friends, we are in a very difficult place in our country as long as Donald Trump still sits in the White House.
The U.S. House pressed swiftly this week towards impeachment to remove Trump from office for what Democrats and some Republicans claim is incitement of insurrection. The House began debating the impeachment resolution on Wednesday, exactly 1 week before Democrat Joe Biden is set to be inaugurated. Biden will become the second Catholic U.S. president, but Biden has promised a pro-abortion agenda, what some are calling the most extreme yet, and that directly contradicts the Catholic Church's teachings on life. Biden's presidency will also be joined by a Democratic majority in the House and Senate after Republican incumbents Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue lost their seats in last week's Georgia runoff races. Dan Lipinski, up until this month, was a U.S. representative for the state of Illinois and a Catholic pro-life Democrat, one at that. He joins us now via Skype. Congressman, welcome back. You served in Congress for 16 years, 8 terms, and just days after you ended your term and left, our U.S. Capitol was stormed by rioters. First, what's your reaction to the events we saw last week?
Well, it was disturbing. It was incredibly troubling that the U.S. Capitol, which is both the symbol of our republic, but also really the linchpin of our republic, to see an attack like that was just terrible. Something that I thought that I would never see, and what this means for our country going forward. It means we have a lot of work to do to bring our nation back together, and it's going to be a tough job to do.
A lot of pro-lifers are feeling defeated that Democrats will maintain control of the White House, the House, and now the U.S. Senate. You have the perspective of being a pro-life Democrat. What's your take on the state of pro-life efforts during this term? Do you have some hope that any pro-life progress can be made?
Well, I think over the next 2 years at least, it's going to have to be playing defense in Congress. I'm hopeful that because the majorities in the House and Senate are so narrow for Democrats, I'm hopeful that we will not see major policy changes, such as getting rid of the Hyde Amendment so that no taxpayer funds go to abortion. But that's something that we all have to be on top of and be working on right now to make sure legislators who we believe are probably on the borderline on this issue, hear from pro-life Americans that we do not want taxpayer funding of abortion. But there are going to be executive orders that President Biden is very likely early on to put forward, to institute, that are going to reverse a lot of the pro-life orders that President Trump had done. And that's going to be a matter of, questions going to be, are the bishops going to come out and say anything about President Biden being Catholic, making these executive orders?
Do you think pro-lifers can depend on Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia to be a pro-life vote in the Senate? He is a Democrat.
I'm very hopeful that we can count on him to be a pro-life vote. Joe Manchin is going to have a lot of power in the Senate right now as the a very moderate Democrat, but he's going to have to hear from his constituents about how important it is that he maintain a pro-life stand.
President-elect Joe Biden is, like you, a Democrat and Catholic, but unlike you, is pro-abortion. What's your message to President-elect Biden and to any Catholics who serve in his administration when it comes to protecting the sanctity of life?
Well, look, I have been a strong life. I was for 16 years a defender of life in the U.S. Congress, and it is sad to see that we have Catholics who will not defend life. President Biden, in many ways, I've said, is the best Democrat I could see when it comes to trying to bring people together in this nation and work together. And I would just urge President Biden not to take a radical pro-choice stand as President of the United States. That's not going to bring our nation together. I think we all need to pray. I know we need to pray for President Biden and all Catholics in his administration that they decide to stand up for life. And that's what we need to do.
We just have a minute left, but what is your message to your former colleagues in Congress right now?
Well, I think they really need to, they know how difficult the situation is, and I'm talking to them, and the tension there is really terrible. And they need to lead the way. They need to be leaders in bringing our nation back together. I'm hopeful that they will step up and do that, but it's also up to all of us to not get embroiled in these battles and understand that we need to stand together, stand up for democracy, and come together as Americans. And we all play a part in that.
Absolutely. Dan Lipinski, thank you so much for your time this week. Thank you.
Thank you.
For continued pro-life analysis, we're joined now in studio by Mallory Quigley, the Vice President of Communications for the Susan B. Anthony list. Mallory, thanks for being here. Now that the dust has settled from last week's Georgia runoff results, what is the Susan B. Anthony list take on why Perdue and Loeffler lost? Is the pro-life issue losing its ability to drive out voters in Georgia?
It's a fair question, Catherine, and I think what's important to remember is that we're not having these pro-life conversations in a vacuum. Our nation is dealing with so many other questions, and there was record high turnout, far surpassing the historical norms on both sides in Republican and Democrat districts. And we know from our data on the ground, I know you talked to Michelle and Mrs. Musgrave last week, that we saw that the life issue does still move voters. We have plenty of data from this election cycle that supports that, and there was just incredible turnout.
Mallory, as we were just discussing, the anxiety and division in our nation is palpable. It feels like a historically tense time.
Yeah.
Mallory, what are your thoughts on how we can sound the alarm with genuine pro-life concerns that there are right now, but without feeding into the anxiety and division and without vilifying those who disagree with us?
Yes, I think what's so important to remember is that this dehumanization of people that we disagree with on a political and policy level cannot extend so far that we cannot resort to dehumanization. As pro-lifers, this is what we're fighting against with regards to the unborn, that we deny humanity of these children because we can't see them, because they're not like us, and we can't do that to our opponents. I found myself so often turning to invoking St. Michael and the Blessed Mother since the beginning of the year. We cannot give up our Christian hope. You know, we're called to persevere and to keep speaking the truth in love and pointing out the good, and we cannot achieve victory without that humanity and recognizing the humanity of all people.
Absolutely. Mallory, with Democrats now controlling the White House, the House, and the Senate, does this mean the pro-life movement will be concentrating on state-by-state strategy instead? What does that landscape look like?
Well, of course, there's very exciting things that are ongoing in the states, but as Congressman Lipinski said, for the next 2 years, we're going to be playing defense, and that's a battle we cannot abandon. And a lot will depend on Senator Manchin, who, of course, represents a very strongly pro-life state, who knows the movement, and who has pledged to prevent things like destruction of the filibuster, which could lead to expansion of the court. So we're hopeful that he will stay in that lane where he's pledged to be. And absolutely, we've got to also, at the same time, while working here in D.C., pivot back to the states where there's incredible momentum continuing from state legislators, ultimately hoping to pass legislation that is upheld by the Supreme Court and is reflective of the values of the people in that state. In Florida, just this week, we announced intentions to pass the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act. That would be a huge win in Florida, which is a state, despite its pro-life views, actually does have a large number of abortions occurring post 20 weeks.
Yes, well, thank you so much for sharing those words of hope and that reminder that we need to be praying right now. I know we'll have many conversations in the weeks to come. Mallory Quigley with the Susan B. Anthony List. Thank you.
Thanks.
Turning now to the global front, Argentina's Senate passed an abortion law last month, legalizing the killing of unborn babies up to the 14th week of pregnancy. The country's Senate passed the legislation by a 38-29 vote just 2 years after a similar initiative fell short in a cliffhanger vote. Argentina's president is in full support of the law that guarantees abortion up to the 14th week of pregnancy and beyond in cases of rape or when a woman's health is at risk. This makes Argentina, Pope Francis's homeland, the largest nation in Latin America to legalize elective abortion. To discuss this more on this issue is Nicolas Mayoraz. He is the district deputy of Santa Fe, Argentina, co-founder of Lawyers for Life Santa Fe, and a pro-life legislator in Argentina who lobbied against this abortion law. He joins us now on Skype. Nicolas, welcome. Argentina became the largest nation in Latin America to legalize elective abortion, a major disappointment to pro-lifers around the world. Can you clarify what this new abortion law means for Argentina?
Hi. Well, we didn't expect this law because in Argentina, many people are disagree with abortion. But unfortunately, this government go further and provoke this terrible law, and it will be a bad precedent for all the region because this is the first country that legalized abortion as a so-called law, as a so-called right. So it's not good for our country, not only for the unborn child, but for the physicians, all the personnel of the hospitals, because they will be threatened about the objection conscious. So they will be really in problem, all people in Argentina who decide to protect unborn life. So it's really bad news for us.
Yes. Pope Francis did make a last-minute appeal before the decision was made. What would you like to hear from the Holy Father now on this issue?
Well, I would like to hear a strong support for the people who defend the sanctity of life in the Senate the last week of the year, because they need to be supported. They need to be to receive the support of the Pope and all the Church and all the people who were at the streets claiming for the life, for the protection of the life. They need that support.
Brazil's president came out and expressed his disagreement with the new law and said, quote, abortion will never be approved on our soil. However, earlier this month, the Associated Press spoke to 2 Brazilian women seeking abortions in Argentina. Does it worry you that women from other countries will be traveling to Argentina for an abortion? And if so, what can be done to stop this from happening?
Yes, that is a real problem because in Argentina, the public health system is free. So if you need to be attended to provide an abortion, they will don't ask if they live in Argentina or not. So we'll have people from Brazil, from Chile, from Uruguay, or from other countries where the abortion is not so allowed like it will be in Argentina, no?
What are some things that you and other pro-lifers in the country are doing to spread the word about the beauty of life right now?
Well, we have to work together. All the pro-life groups, all the NGOs have to work together to strengthen our forces, because the next battle is in the hospitals with the physicians, all the health personnel, that they need the protection of the law, because the conscious objection is a constitutional law, and this law will deny that right. So as a lawyer, all the politics have to help them. They need our help. So that will be the work. And the women who are not really treated like they deserve, we have to protect them, just to make them not decide to abort, because abortion is a decision, a very crucial decision at the beginning of the pregnancy. So if we have the government offering women only abortion, we have to put our NGOs, our groups of people, the grassroots, working together with women who are vulnerable to help them to choose life for their children.
Absolutely. Nicolas Mayoraz, thank you for joining us, and be assured of our prayers for Argentina.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Coming up, the U.S. government executes the first female inmate in nearly 7 decades. I speak out after the break. Plus, a way for Catholics to start building a culture of life right from their home. We'll tell you how you can participate next. Welcome back to EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. I'm Catherine Hadro. For the first time since 1953, a woman was executed by the U.S. federal government. That is this week's Speak Out segment. Her name was Lisa Montgomery, and after receiving a lethal injection at a federal prison complex, she was pronounced dead 1:31 a.m. on Wednesday, becoming the first female inmate to be federally executed in nearly 7 decades. Montgomery was convicted of killing a 23-year-old woman in 2004 who was 8 months pregnant. Montgomery then cut the baby from the womb and attempted to pass the girl off as her own. But lawyers and those close to Montgomery argued putting her to death violated her constitutional rights because they say she had, quote, brain damage, severe mental illness, and suffered a lifetime of sexual torture.
People have to understand that children that go through childhood abuse, it changes who they are. I went through that, and it took me years and years to overcome it. But I also had a good foundation that helped me overcome it. Lisa did not have that foundation, and she was broken.
Lisa has been diagnosed with organic brain damage and serious mental illness that requires her to be heavily medicated at all time. This is the type of evidence that is critically relevant to determining an appropriate punishment for a serious crime.
Our world is not safer with Lisa Montgomery dead. This entire case is tragedy compounded upon tragedy. Reading about the victim Montgomery killed, Bobby Joe Stinnett, it shakes you to the core of your soul. That crime in 2004 is so evil and perverse. And then when you learn about Montgomery's life, that she had been diagnosed with various mental illnesses and experienced brain damage due to physical and sexual abuse she endured as a child, you begin to see the bigger picture, the large web of sins and evil. Now that the federal government executed her, ended her life, it adds sin upon sin. God alone is the author of life. It is not up to us to decide when someone's life should end. As Archbishop Paul Coakley told me last month, the Church's stance against the death penalty does not mean we are soft on justice. It means that we are very, very firmly committed to the preservation and protection of human dignity. The March for Life is about 2 weeks away now. There are COVID guidelines in place. All marchers must wear masks or face coverings for the entirety of the rally and march. And if you're feeling sick and experiencing symptoms, the March for Life asks that you stay home. But ahead of that peaceful pro-life rally on January 29th, our U.S. bishops are offering a way for Catholics to start building a culture of life right from your home. That is this week's pro-life focus. The U.S. bishops are launching the 9 Days for Life Novena, beginning Thursday, January 21st. During those 9 days, Catholics will be asked to pray for various intercessions, from praying for all the unborn children in the womb to praying for anyone who advocates for abortion to be converted, and to pray for our civic leaders. The novena will conclude on January 29th, the day of the March for Life. To tell us more, we're joined on Skype now by Kat Talalas, the Assistant Director for Pro-Life Communications at the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. Kat, welcome back. A big practical question first. Tell us more about the 9 Days for Life novena and how do viewers participate?
9 Days for Life is an opportunity for prayer and reparation in honor of all of the victims of abortion and in recognition of the anniversary of Roe versus Wade. You can join thousands of Catholics across the country in praying for an end to abortion, and you can sign up at respectlife.org.
Excellent. Kat, this is a very politically fraught time. It's something we've been discussing throughout this show. It's a tense time in our nation, and prayer is so needed. But prayer in our culture is often mocked as not taking true action. What's your response to that, especially when it comes to building up a culture of life right now?
Anything good that we do, we know that we do through God's grace. It is His holy will working through us. So it is absolutely necessary for us to humble our hearts and to turn to Jesus Christ in order to accomplish anything that is worthy. We know that prayer moves mountains, as Jesus said, and it also helps our soul in discerning what is the right action to take. So as long as we are rooted in Christ, we know that then the actions we do will actually serve the greater purpose and accomplish God's holy will. And it really is only through having that relationship with Jesus and allowing Him to love us and to heal our hearts that we can create a culture that truly values and cherishes the dignity of every human life.
Amen to that. Kat, every year there is a national prayer vigil for life that takes place at the Basilica of the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception here in D.C. before the March for Life. What will that look like this year, given all the COVID restrictions?
Well, due to the attendance restrictions imposed because of the pandemic, the opening Mass of the National Prayer Vigil for Life at the National Shrine will be closed to the public this year. However, it will continue to be broadcast here on EWTN. But also in response, for the first time ever, in addition to the televised masses, bishops and dioceses across the country will be taking turns leading holy hours every hour on the hour throughout the night of the vigil. So the vigil will begin as normal at 8 p.m. with the Rosary for Life and the Mass, the opening Mass, which will be celebrated by Archbishop Naumann, who is the chairman of the Bishops' Pro-Life Committee. And then after that, bishops across the country from Connecticut to Hawaii will be taking turns leading these holy hours, and all can participate by going on USCCB's website or the Basilica's website. Then the following morning on the 29th, Mass will be celebrated by Archbishop Lori. And actually that Mass, which will also be at the Basilica, will be open to the public to attend. However, attendance is limited to 200. So we highly encourage you to go on the Basilica's website and get tickets if you're interested in participating in person.
That's a lot of really good information and a lot of ways to offer our viewers to participate in some way the day of the March for Life. And another website that we can point viewers to is the 9 daysforlife.com. I know there's a lot more information there as well. Kat Talalas, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks. And of course, as Kat mentioned, you can catch complete coverage of this year's historic March for Life and the National Prayer Vigil for Life right here on EWTN. That does it for this edition of EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. Until next time, we'd love to hear from you. Find us on social media at EWTN Pro-Life on all social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, we're there. You can also send us a message by emailing prolifeweekly@ewtn.com. We love to hear from you. Remember, life is a gift. Your life is a gift. God bless.